So to continue and wrap up the discussion of Wicca, Wiccans believe that there should be a change in our consciousness. In other words, self-realization regarding the interaction of these elemental forces, or the realization regarding worshiping these ancient gods and goddesses. Whatever the practices are, is we need to achieve that realization, that awakening within ourselves, to see the true understanding of not only ourselves, but reality as well. And we need to live in harmony with these divine forces that we encounter in nature, and we need to practice deeds that will benefit humanity. A lot of people associate, when they hear about witchcraft, they think about, dark magic, which is not the case. We're not, casting evil spells on people or doing things like that. That's, happens in the movies. So, that awakening, that realization that moves us beyond the material existence is, into a deeper and higher level of understanding reality that gives us a truer sense of self. So that's a very brief look at Wicca. Then we encounter the Church of Scientology, which, unlike Wicca, the Church of Scientology is new, in the sense of new, meaning that had not existed before. So for the history of the Church of Scientology, it was founded by L. Ron Hubbard. L. Ron Hubbard had enrolled in college, but things weren't really going that well for him in college. He wasn't that happy, so he dropped out of college, and then he became a successful science fiction writer. He's written a lot of science fiction novels. Then the Second World War came along, World War II. So he served in World War II. Then, after the Second World War, he went back to writing, and then he wrote the book that's called Dianetics. And Dianetics involves mental health. He didn't really like the practices regarding psychology and psychiatry that were going on during the time, and he came up with a new way of living a healthy mental life. And that's what Dianetics is about. So then he started to attract followers, and he educated them in the principles of Dianetics. So then he started to give seminars, and to what we would, if this was going on thousands of years ago, it would have been termed spreading the faith, right? So he started to educate people on Dianetics. And then he started to give counseling regarding the teachings that were contained in Dianetics. And you're kind of wondering, I wonder what people in the 50s, what they thought about this. And his practices were quite controversial. And this is when the cult was born regarding Dianetics, today what we call Scientology. If you remember the three things that we need for a cult: charismatic founder through whom the new teachings came from, right? So that's L. Ron Hubbard, and the new teachings, Dianetics, not to be found any other place. L. Ron Hubbard was a very charismatic man, was able to draw people to him and attracting followers. And those teachings superseded the teachings of the existing religions in that time, which were Judaism and Christianity in America. Then he started to be viewed with suspicion and distrust, not only by Christian and Jewish leaders, but also by people in America who didn't even go to church. So then things started to get heated up for L. Ron Hubbard and his followers. So they were traveling around for a little bit. They even went overseas to England. And then so they were kind of bouncing around and moving around, giving these seminars and counselings regarding the teachings of Dianetics, and at the same time trying to, keep out of trouble with the law. And it wasn't until 1993 that the U.S. government recognized the Church of Scientology as a valid church, as a valid faith. And just in case you're wondering what that means for U.S. recognition, it's important because then you get to write off what you give to the church on your taxes. So a lot of people say the Church of Scientology is a cult. It is not a cult. It started as a cult, right? Started as a cult. But now it is indeed a church. No different than Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, all of the others that we've talked about. So it is indeed a church that started as a cult. So what does the Church of Scientology teach? One of the key points of the Church of Scientology is that the true self is not the soul. So for example, when we were with Hinduism, if you remember that, so here at the end of the class we can kind of reflect back upon the different faiths that we've covered to kind of tie things together, right? In Hinduism, the true self is what was called the Atman, right? That was the part of Brahman that's planted in each one of us, and that when we die, the Atman is passed on, the transmigration of the soul, which is also called reincarnation, yes, right? And that's what's passed on and gets planted into a new person, or if you have bad life, gets planted into, say, for example, an animal, right? Then in the monotheistic faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the true self is referred to as the soul. And it's that part of us, right, the soul after death is either united with God or is punished in hell, right? So all those different, but in Scientology, the true self is called the Thetan. And the Thetan is what inhabits the body. The Thetan is eternal. So in other words, when you die, your Thetan passes to another body, similar to one's Atman in Hinduism passing and then being reincarnated into another form during the transmigration of the soul. Now, to attain this realization, you first have to acknowledge the reality of the Thetan before you can start to work your way up to reach a higher level of spiritual understanding. And this is one of the things with the Church of Scientology, is that there's different levels, there's different gradations of spiritual understanding. It involves movement from lower levels up into higher levels. And we'll start to talk more about those different levels of understanding in the next lecture.